Microsoft's biggest conference of the year, Microsoft Ignite, finished just over a week ago. And now we are at ESPC, where we finally have time to deep dive into some of those amazing announcements and really understand what they mean for enterprises. But because there's so many great announcements for SharePoint, today I have the honor to be joined by Adam Harmetz, VP of Product at Microsoft. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good to be here.
Adam, you presented at Ignite. You presenting 4 sessions, I think, over here with the lightning talks, with everything, right? You're a busy man.
Yeah, no, it's fun. This is a good season to sort of engage with the community and update people and sort of also recap the year, right? It's been a really intense 2025, and so it comes at a good time when it's sort of figuring out everything we did this year and making it all packaged up together.
It's been a busy year for sure, and I think with this week you talked about SharePoint's 25th birthday, so I guess it's going to be an even busier year ahead.
Yeah, no, I think 2026 will be a big year for SharePoint. We want to look ahead, not back, but still it's good to celebrate 25 years of community and progress and a resilient product and sort of why that is and have that inform where we're going with the product. So we hope to make the birthday both a way of celebrating the community, but then sort of talking about where product's going and kicking off it's sort of earlier-ish in the year, right? Yeah. It'll kick off a real big year for us.
I think my favorite memory was the picture you put on LinkedIn with your friend, the SharePoint monkey.
Yep.
That was my favorite SharePoint swag ever. I still have the 2010 and 2013 version.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're going to get a 25 years of SharePoint monkey version.
I would love that. We've
giving ideas to the marketing team.
Yeah, I know, right? We have this great video. We did this boot camp on site when the monkeys were in full steam, and we had 150 of them. We gave out to a bunch of new hires, and we launched them all at once.
Oh wow!
150 monkeys screaming.
That's something.
Yeah.
After Ignite, you announced a bunch of things, and of course, the community comes to us MVPs. For some of the questions. So hopefully I can ask them to you and you can tell us
let's get into
a bit deeper into the details. One of the really cool announcements that you did this year, and I think you made it official at Ignite, is that agents now fully understand SharePoint metadata. And we've always known that SharePoint metadata is important. I think, you've been doing SharePoint for 25 years now. So I'm sure you've told it to so many customers, but nobody ever wants to do it. What can you tell us about agents and metadata? And a Copilot, does it care about metadata at all?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think the larger story is it's going to be pretty clear that pre-cooking data helps Copilot and agents have better citations. A lot of times AI can figure out in real time what's going on with how to respond best, but if you can pre-cook the data, that's great. Like if you have a list of invoices and you have, let's say, 100,000 invoices and you want to figure out the expenses in those invoices for all of them, of course, AI is smart enough to go into every invoice and get out the expenses, but that's going to take a long time for the response query, right? So what you want to do is you want to pre-cook the data, you want to pull that out, and you want to have that available and index such that that can be AI can respond quicker. I just used a bunch of language that is something that you and I have used.
I've never heard the term pre-cooked before.
Well, but it's sort of an old concept recast in the era of AI. I'm just trying to make sure people are sort of story arc from before to after. And so the notion of extracting metadata is just it helps humans, it helps filters, it helps views, but it also is just a way of allowing AI to respond faster, quicker, and more accurate. We're trying to figure out. We're looking at our own internal evals and sort of the value of metadata versus not. And it appears that we'll have our data science sort of firm this up in the new year, but it helps AI respond better in the first time. So it's not like people can't find the answers to questions, but sometimes you need to do a couple turns with AI before it gets the right response you're looking for. If you have a structured repository with good metadata, you get the answer better the first time. And so metadata is not for every single document. We're not saying every single collab document that you're working on across the entire interstate, but product repositories, invoices, these things with structure, high value repositories where you've probably spent a lot of money creating finished product. That's great to have metadata. And like you said, there's sort of two sides of it. One, now the knowledge agent can extract that metadata automatically. And then I think what you were asking about is that now agents and soon Copilot understands that metadata. So when you ask a query, when you ask Copilot something that it really is sort of the answer is in that metadata, it can answer that. Basic things like I said, like what's the highest invoice in this library, right? Is something you could ask an agent right now, and very soon within, I don't know when we're publishing this, but we're basically rolling it out to the core Copilot experience.
Okay, so right now it's SharePoint agents as we're recording this, but as we go into the new calendar year, it will be in Copilot chat, and I guess all the other Copilot experience.
Yeah, exactly. That is the vision, and we're already done coding that. We're just in the middle of rolling it out.
That's amazing. Well, actually, I had you're gonna laugh, a SharePoint Premium workshop on Monday. I need to update a few logos and things like that, but that's one of the examples we did where we added the metadata to invoices, and then we saw them. We could compare invoices directly in the knowledge agent, asking questions. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I think it's it's exciting. And then we even have stuff. Yeah, anyway, it's like, we talked about the sort of ability for Copilot to create a list. And that's just a great example of using metadata. And, so there's just like this whole ecosystem that I think around sort of lists, libraries with metadata, and then agents and Copilot that it's, we're very far along on, and we're going to get all those rough edges smoothed out in the first couple months of 2026 as well, just to make all those workflows work.
Awesome. But entering that metadata has always been painful in the past. And is it 2 years ago that autofill columns got released, I think?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Whereas we had the syntax models before, but now autofill is way easier and way cooler. So we can use AI to actually fill that metadata for us, or at least get us 95% of the way there, and 5%, if ever, we need to correct it. But you did have a cool announcement at Ignite on how we can use the knowledge agent, how everyone can use it now. There's no more excuse, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, basically, I know we've had Syntax, we've had SharePoint Premium. I take full responsibility
for Syntax, Microsoft Syntax.
There's and part of that has just been tracking the evolution of the industry. It's sort of AI, and in particular for us, Copilot has become the center of gravity. Yeah. We're not afraid. Customers basically asked us to attach to that wave and to simplify things, and so that's why we basically merge autofill with the knowledge agent and merged knowledge agent into the Copilot, the Copilot license, and so it's all one thing now. And hopefully that while that has been a change and evolution, it simplifies it over the long term, right? There's the Copilot license that comes with a bunch of out-of-box agents. One of them's knowledge agent, and you get autofill included with the Copilot license, and so everybody can benefit from that. Hopefully it simplifies things as time goes by.
Awesome. So just to confirm, as soon as you have an M365 Copilot, once knowledge agent goes into GA, which is January, if I remember correctly, right?
We haven't actually announced a Q1 date. We're targeting early next year.
Early next year. Maybe I'm just hoping it would be January.
We hope it's as soon as it's, we're quality evals. This was a public preview off by default, and so please turn it on, give us the feedback. We're watching all that data. It's not like we don't. It's not like we have a date. We're not just sharing it. We really are being sort of quality driven about it. But we're targeting, and we think we can track in that time frame.
Okay, and by the way, for my admins out there, since November 5th, I think, we can actually turn it on with opt-in on certain sites only. So we don't have that tenant and then have to create 1,000 sites to opt out. We can just opt in on 5 sites if you want to test it on. So that makes it really a lot easier. Because I know it was a problem for some admins that if you only wanted one site, you had to turn it on for the tenant and then opt out. The other sites. Now it's a lot easier.
Yeah, our plan was to have all that available on the day of the public preview, but then something sort of missed a train, and by the time we caught up. But we'd prefer people turn it on everywhere.
Yeah,
it is a new. It's the AI. Well, but it is the AI mode for SharePoint site, and so it only really impacts if you have the Copilot license, and so we'd like that. But we know that a lot of people sort of just want to test it just on the IT site first or something like that.
Well, with a few departments that are a bit more tech savvy and open to things like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. When we are GA, we do plan to sort of make it available by default everywhere because we think it'll hit the quality, and we'll think it'll hit all the various stage gates we're looking for to be the AI experience for every SharePoint site.
Okay, so follow the usual Microsoft timeline where it's opt out by default, you have to manually opt in, where it will be on by default, but you can turn it off if you want to.
We're still, that is
There's the plan. At least
that
for
is
now.
the plan. As we get closer to GA, of course, we'll finalize that. We'll take a look at it. But, we, just like a lot of other AI features, we do think like I said, it's that sort of AI experience.
That you want people to use.
Yeah.
I want to deep dive into the licensing a bit, because for many organizations, not everybody has an M365 Copilot license yet. Some people are pay as you go on some things, or using Copilot chat included in M365. Who needs that Copilot license? Is it the person that's creating the columns using the knowledge agent? Is it the person that uploads it? Is there any clarification on that side?
Yeah, great question. And now we're getting into the details, aren't we? So right now during the preview, the autofill column part of the knowledge agent is included for everyone with a Copilot license. So you can create the columns, and if you upload a document, it'll be processed by autofill for free. The caveat there is if a non-licensed user uploads a document, the autofill will only be processing if you have pay-as-you-go set up, and it'll be billed through that pay-as-you-go process. Things are still in preview. We'll look to, first document this as part of GA, and of course, they're tweaking based upon feedback. The big picture is that the knowledge agent is included with the Copilot license, and then I'm glad we got into some of the details here.
I love it. And I also understand you don't want to have the same problems that you had with the syntax per user license back then. So it's going to be a mix of everything.
Sure. Yeah. I do think syntax is awesome. The scenarios are alive and well. But I think both ourselves and customers were saying fewer things better, and sort of like putting that all in the Copilot license.
Yeah. I'm a big
AI skill. Yeah. I know. Yeah. Is the direction we're going.
Awesome. Now let's switch over a bit to something even more basic. At Ignite in the keynote, Microsoft announced Work IQ. But from the description, everybody kind of said, wait, that's Microsoft Graph. Did they just rename Microsoft Graph? What's the relationship between a Microsoft Graph and Work IQ?
Yeah, you're right. Almost certainly since the Delve days, but maybe even before that, there's always been this concept that we've had, which is sort of the intelligence layer of Microsoft 365. And we've used the term graph for that. And then we've also used that same term graph to really refer to the API data layer access to Microsoft 365. And so no real changes to the developer focused way we're talking about the API access to Microsoft 365. That is the graph. It'll continue to be the graph. We needed a new term for that intelligence layer. That's sort of the brain of Microsoft 365, for lack of a better phrase. I think we needed a new term for a couple of reasons. One, just to sort of re-clarify how important it is in the era of AI. In the year 2025, and one of my main takeaways is just how critical that relationship between the content system and the intelligence layer is. We don't always talk about it, but every month we're dozens of different updates to sort of really make sure that Copilot is understanding SharePoint content incredibly natively, for instance. And then second, I do think the Work IQ is more expansive than the term we've used for graph way back in the Delve days. If on this podcast, I can talk to the people that have been around a while, mainly because it includes memory and inference. And so when we say Work IQ, we also mean it remembers your preferences. It remembers, if you prefer very concise responses from Copilot, or as you're crafting a mail to this particular person, and this is the type of language you like to use with this person. That was never really part of the graph vision, right? It was a little bit maybe, but it was a little bit more about signals, and I think referring to something slightly more expansive. And so that's sort of one big difference. And as time goes by, we'll expand it to sort of group memory and concepts like that. And so yes, I think for a majority of our customers that maybe don't pay attention every single day and never realize we use the term graph, Work IQ, it's the brain of Copilot. For those that have been along on the journey, there's definitely a transition there that hopefully that clarified a little bit.
So from now on, if you're a developer, you're still going to use the graph is alive and well. But if I explain to a business user how Copilot works, Copilot talks to Work IQ, which calls the graph if needed to get your work data.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's the high level thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Well, I recently did some of the new Copilot exams.
Okay.
And there's questions around that subject on how Copilot works. So it'll be interesting to have them updated after Ignite.
Yeah, I mean, and just to close it before we move on, I do think, it's not just one more word from Microsoft to memorize. Work IQ is so critical to the differentiated value of Copilot.
Yes.
And it is so clear to me that customers should and will choose a really tight coupling between sort of the productivity, the content system, and then the intelligence layer and the AI experiences built on top of it. Like that, Work IQ really is sort of the brain of Copilot in a very meaningful way.
And I think you guys also showed it at, I think it was Jeff Teeper's session at Ignite, where you showed the difference between ChatGPT connected to SharePoint and M365 Copilot, and how Copilot can connect better to our data than even other services that connect through just the graph or just through APIs.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, connectors are important. We have connectors to other repositories for sure. But when it comes to your core productivity data, your documents, your email, your chats, the connectors are just a thin straw, and they just don't get the richness, and they just don't get the level of depth of understanding of content. We, for years, for instance, have generated thumbnails for every single PowerPoint slide so we can render the PowerPoints faster. We're actually sending those PowerPoint thumbnails to the LLMs so they can do visual references on PowerPoint and answer questions like if you have an org chart and you point to who the CEO is, it can respond like, oh, the CEO says, just one of many examples of what it means to sort of have a deep interaction between the content management system and the chat layer. And, I think you'll see more of that. And I think you'll see that, to respond more accurate, more quicker, Work IQ beat the connector strategy hands down.
Awesome. One final question for you. I know you're super busy. At Ignite, you announced SharePoint Designer. No, I'm joking. But we did announce that there's a new, simpler way to do workflows directly in SharePoint. Can you clarify a bit? Is that a different service than Power Automate? Or is it just a simpler way to interact with Power Automate, but we still only have one service in the back?
It's basically the latter. First off, it's completely coordinated with teams, exactly the same code, co-developed together. Literally, like the two teams are partying in the same code base. I think the best way of thinking about it is it's a new, simpler UX for design for productivity on top of Power Automate. And so we've had we've actually, over the past 5 or 6 years, we've had different ways of integrating with Power Automate. Sometimes something has been so simple that we've created ourselves. Sometimes we've automatically created a Power Automate. Sometimes we've had some Power Automate templates in a very simple way. This is basically saying, I think the right strategy, of course, is you don't want multiple workflow systems. So it's just Power Automate. Love Power Automate. Love creating those workflows. But the UX didn't work for an very average basic teams in SharePoint user. So we created a UX front end with a healthy number of templates that sort of work to the usability bar and simplicity bar for the teams and SharePoint user base. And, there's an edit and Power Automate button on everything you create, so it can round trip in there. But think about it as really expanding the templates as well as the simplicity of UX that allows us to move away from custom stuff like our custom rules and just sort of be able to use Power Automate under the hood, but have a UX that is simple to set up as as some of the stuff that you've seen in Office.
So eventually it will replace the custom rule engine we have today to only have Power Automate as a backend.
I think so. We're looking at that. Maybe there are some things that are, yes, essentially, whether under the hood, whether we have sort of two systems for various reasons, but conceptual to the end user, yeah.
Okay. No, that's going to be awesome. And I love the fact that we're only going to have one system and you have that get started. But if you need more, edit in Power Automate. And then if you know what you're doing, you have the full power of Power Automate.
Yeah, I know. And it took us a little bit longer to get that right, I guess. It was a bigger project joint with other teams at Microsoft, but it feels pretty durable and right to me, especially in the era of AI, because there's already a natural language text box for creating, assigning a template, and so it's something we can build off of as time goes by.
Awesome. One final question for you: as we're heading into 2026, what do you think people should learn? And if there was one or two features that you wish every company would try out, what would they be?
Well, my own sort of selfish thing. I do think the knowledge agent is pretty transformative, both for end users visiting SharePoint as well as, owners and site owners and content owners. So try out the knowledge agent, especially when it's in public preview. Would be sort of thing number one. Thing number two, it's a great time to be a maker. It's a great time to be a builder. It hasn't been a better time to be a maker or a builder. We have agent development right now. We have something like App Builder we announced very recently around Ignite timeframe in Copilot. We'll have more coming in SharePoint next year. So tool up and skill up on your agent development, tool and skill up on just sort of building solutions, and expect 2026 to really be a year of agent development, of solution development, of vibe coding, integrated even deeper into the productivity experiences that everybody uses every day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. For everybody watching, please connect with Adam. He's very active on LinkedIn. Amazing blog around product management, managing teams as well, right? Mind the Beat.
Mind the Beat. That's
Mind the Beat. I'll make sure to have the link in the description below. And if you've enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like this from conferences, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.